I am a professional rejuvenation athlete. I love it.
Tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson is spending millions trying to turn back time on his body. I visited him last year to unearth his extreme and sometimes controversial regime of fitness, fasting, a load of tablets, tracking and treatments. And I'm back to see how it's going.
It is 3 steps, no rail.
Okay. I'm gonna have to do this now. Oh, yep.
Nice work. It really hits the...
A little bit imbalanced, but generally,
yeah, good job, well done.
How old am I?
A lot younger than a lot of people who pass through the house.
We're back in the clinic.
Yeah, we're back. So if you step over here, on top of this,
okay.
And then hold it here.
Right.
And then I'll turn it on. But first, let me give you eye protection.
Lovely, thank you very much. What is this actually going to do to me?
It's gonna make you feel, it's gonna give you energy. You love energy.
Is this gonna feel like lying in the sun?
It's gonna feel like the womb.
I can't remember what that felt like.
Okay, ready?
Wow, it's bright even with these on my eyes.
I do it for accelerated healing, blood flow, even for mood improvement.
It does feel a bit like that warmth from the sunshine, which does make you feel quite happy. And this is going to give me energy?
It will.
Can you talk me through what you're looking at in your brain and then any kind of interventions you're doing to try and reverse that biological age?
So we look at the brain several ways. One, we look at the anatomical structure with MRI. So the brain shrinks and changes over time. So you're looking at the actual brain. And then functionally, you're looking at how it actually works.
But then what can you do next?
So we've done several things. Like last year when we spoke, I mentioned that I had internal jugular vein stenosis. So I had problems where my posture was poor like this, and it actually...
Probably not now.
Yeah, I fixed it.
Yeah.
And it lessened my blood flow. And so with bad posture, I had white matter hyperintensity. So this is like a scarring for the brain. When I fixed my posture and I did the physical therapy exercises, I reduced my white matter hyperintensities by 9 years. So I dramatically reduced my brain age by fixing my posture.
All of this is, of course, just one person's experiments, and he's testing all sorts. Well, I would ask if we're going cycling, but it's attached to something, so I don't think we are. What is this?
The theory is that this therapy can improve concentration, peacefulness, improve sleep, and it may also improve the white matter hyperintensity. So it may improve damage that's caused in the brain. There's no evidence on this, so we're experimenting, as we do with a lot of things. So I do this every day for 10 minutes if you want to try it out.
I'd love to try it out. I doubt I'm actually going to feel anything in the time that I put it on, am I? But maybe I'm going to be incredibly sharp and clever later.
Okay.
What's it actually doing? How does it work?
So just like you're familiar with red light therapy for the body for improved healing, it's the same thing for the brain. It's just a wavelength that's optimized to go through the skull and the skin and get to the brain.
What we have to remember is that if you do an experiment on an individual, that is very different than an experiment on a population that can be peer-reviewed and replicated.
We know the importance of social interactions when it comes to feeling young, and that sense of community and talking to people really helps us feel our best often. But you don't like talking to people, especially after 8:30 when you go to bed. So don't you think you need to do a bit more socialising if you're doing everything to try and reduce your biological age?
Yeah. I would say I am more an introvert than an extrovert. I do socialize quite a bit. So I'll gather people together at my house, we'll have a dinner, and we'll talk about the future of being human.
Maybe, though, we can learn something from the animal world. And one company's been researching ground squirrels like this one behind me to see what they're gaining from hibernation. They may have come out to play today, but this lot spend half the year going in and out of a state of intense hibernation. Their body temperature drops and their metabolic rate is turned down to just 1% of normal.
As they're leaving hibernation, they have this amazing adaptation where they're able to regrow these neurons and they're able to have these neuronal connections again.
Biotech company Fauna has been tracking the animals, aiming to develop drugs to replicate these benefits in humans. As they re-emerge, a swab is taken for further investigation.
Back here in the lab, there's a biobank of squirrel tissue cells here in the corner. But after that, it becomes all about experimenting on human cells and seeing what can be replicated in them.
One side of the coin is looking at Alzheimer's disease patients and saying what's different about their proteins, which genes are active or not active, and then we compare that to the opposing biology of the squirrel that we know can modify the protein in a good way and regrow the neurons.
But does that translate into humans?
Yes, essentially, we only look at genes that are highly similar to humans. So we're talking about 90% of the protein or more looks exactly like the human protein.
Spending 6 months a year underground isn't generally an option for us, but getting good sleep is crucial.
Sleep is the single most effective thing that you can do each and every day to reset your brain and body health. There is no operation of your mind that isn't wonderfully enhanced when you get sleep or demonstrably impaired when you don't get enough.
Professor Matthew Walker spends most of his waking hours talking sleep and analysing that of patients in his sleep clinic.
This is where the staff will be monitoring the patient. These are nets that we place on your head, and it allows us to precisely measure exactly where we need to place the electrodes consistently on every head, and we've got your data.
These sorts of experiments teach Matthew and other sleep experts a lot.
Your brain has a cleansing system. We knew that your body had one. It's called the lymphatic system. You've heard of that. We didn't think the brain had one, but it does. And it's called the glymphatic system, named after the glial cells that make it up. It was specifically during sleep and during deep sleep that this sort of, power cleanse for the brain began to unfold. Why is this relevant for Alzheimer's? Because two of the pieces of metabolic buildup of this detritus that was washed away by the glymphatic system during sleep were things called beta amyloid and tau protein, which are two of the culprits underlying Alzheimer's. There is a silver lining in all of this story of dementia and sleep, because maybe we can do something about it. You don't start to see the decline in your deep sleep that is associated with Alzheimer's risk in your 60s or your 70s. It's already underway. It begins in your late 30s. We can start to detect that decline. So what if I could shift from a model of late-stage treatment to a model of midlife prevention? And could we start to help the brain at that midlife stage? And in doing so, could we bend the arrow of Alzheimer's disease risk down on itself?
It's not just sleep that's coming under the spotlight. There's increasing research into the long-term impact of depression.
What we've developed is a way to directly measure how your brain functions. And in doing that, we can understand the root causes of mental health disorders such as depression.
And the breakthrough here is the fact that you can actually see this on a scan. You can see depression.
Exactly. What we've been able to do is take that complexity and measure what we call the kind of superhighways, the primary connections involved in how we think, how we feel, and what gets disrupted. The presence of having depression does increase the risk for later life conditions, some dementias, other chronic diseases as well.
Data from 6,600 people's brains has been analysed to understand what looks healthy and how signs of depression can show up.
What you see here is 6 different major circuits of the brain, and they're engaged in functions like how we think, the one in red, how we feel positive emotion, the one in purple. Depression, sadly, it affects people when they're very young, very often. The onset is late teens, early 20s. And so if you don't find a way to understand that and treat, ultimately prevent, you're going to have the chronic effect of that dysfunction, disruption in the brain across your life.
Music is a big part of life here at Loma Linda, and there could be some brain gains. Recent studies suggest that learning a musical instrument or even singing throughout your life could benefit your brain health in later years. Playing the piano was seen to be particularly beneficial to memory and problem solving. It's not only about staying sharp though. Healthy, happy aging is about the whole package. Mildred was a doctor. She even set up a hospital in Uganda and was working in healthcare in Loma Linda.
You're 103, aren't you?
Yes,
That's an incredible age. How old do you feel?
I'm getting like a worn-out Model T that's falling apart.
How would you describe your quality of life at this point?
Pretty useless. I would never recommend and say, okay, you pick being old as the way you're going to end your life. Forget it.
You've lived quite some life and you've had to go through a lot to reach this age. Do you recommend living into your hundreds or not?
I don't think I'd recommend anything about life and its length to anybody. Take it as it comes. I have tried to be happy, and I've managed pretty well.
Going from talking to Brian Johnson to someone who's 103 made this all seem very real. We need to look after not just our bodies, but our minds. It's just a matter of how important being able to quantify that is. It's certainly going to make a difference when it comes to research in the future, and the power of AI and big data is making a lot of that possible. It's just right now, there is no silver bullet.
The power of this computational biology and AI will be to help you understand yourself over time and what the things you do benefit you.
Technology's helping us understand and predict like never before. We know better than ever what we should be doing to look after ourselves. But perhaps Mildred should have the last word.
You absolutely need to be very careful with your diet, it's true. But I'm not down for any, you've got to do this and this and this and absolutely not touch this.
Do you think it's more important to live?
I think it's more important to live.
And there's more from the Click